Hey, I'm Steph. I'm a motivator, creator, small business owner, and educator. I'm a lover of all things health, spirituality, inspiration, and business. These are just a few words to describe me, along with passion, grit, and resiliency. Regardless of what I'm up to, I am soul-driven to create a purpose-filled life and find the advantages in adversity, all while keeping a smile on my face.
Soul Driven with Steph is a podcast that will fill up your cup and leave you feeling empowered, inspired, and on fire as you listen to interviews and stories of other soul-driven and strong women that have overcome against all odds. This podcast was a calling on Steph's soul to serve, connect, and share stories of struggles and successes, all to create a community so that you know you're never alone. Grab a cup of coffee, get ready to learn, laugh, and leave with wisdom and strategies to connect to your soul and get back in the driver's seat of your life today. Here's Steph.
Welcome back to another episode of Soul Driven with Steph. I am so excited for this soul-inspired conversation today with a dear friend of mine who has been inspiring me from afar, and I'm excited for you to hear her story today as well. So please welcome to the podcast, Carrie Smith.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Stephanie. I'm so excited to talk with you and be a part of your podcast.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So many things have happened in the last couple of years. We've both just gone through so many changes and transformations, and it's been exciting to see that in other people along their journey. But let's just start in the beginning before we get into all of that. What really was your first introduction that led you into entrepreneurship?
Well, it's funny because I actually I think I'm a bit of an accidental entrepreneur, even though I come from a entrepreneurial family. My father was a small business owner. My mother had small business, but I never saw that for myself originally on my journey. And I just stumbled into owning a dance studio by the grace of a woman looking at me one day who I was working for as a teacher. And she said, "Are you interested in buying my studio? I'm looking for someone to buy my studio." And I remember leaning on the ballet bar, watching some kids doing a combo and her just sort of saying this to me. And I thought, that's a wild idea. And it happened. It seemed wild, but the more I thought about it, it seemed like the right path. I wasn't really sure where my work journey was taking me. Was working in arts administration, had been in a couple of different jobs, had been teaching dance on the side, and I always knew that dance was a big part of my life. And then this opportunity presented itself, and from there, that was 2005, so a long time ago.
Wow. Yeah. So you are going on a 25-year studio owner journey. That's incredible. I mean, to do anything that long, I think says a lot about your passion, your drive, how much you care. So you owned your dance studio for almost 25 years or almost 20 years. And then you kind of had a pivotal point where you wanted to do something different, and you decided to not only sell your studio but to move to a different location and basically kind of start over. So take us through that journey. First, what inspired that, and second, what did you do to be able to make that big leap and evolve into something totally new?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I get this question a lot, and there's not just this was the thing that this is what it. I really believe there were a series of things happening in my life that all contributed to the one moment where I can take you back that I was on my couch in Hartford, Connecticut, around 10:30 on a Friday night, in tears because I had gotten another, email from a teacher who said she would teach the class tomorrow, but then said, "Oh, actually, I can't do Saturdays anymore." And I hesitate to say like that was the moment that made me want to sell my studio, because it wasn't that particular thing that made me say, let me just walk away from this thing of almost 20 years. But it was just that moment of how many more times can I go through this cycle of repeating the same thing and not making the right hire, or not, whatever it was, all these entrepreneurial, the weight of that business was really crushing me. It had grown big, which is a wonderful thing. But it had grown bigger than I really wanted, and the responsibilities of it were still firm squarely on my shoulders. Um, and I just knew something had to change, that I wasn't happy. So I took it. So on that Friday night, I, went to bed and went to work the next day, taught my dance classes. I didn't say anything to anyone about my thoughts and where I was. I really sat with it, and for the next day. And then that Sunday is when I walked into Glenn, my husband's office. He was just, on the computer in the morning hanging out, and said, "I've made a decision." And I was emotional, and it was a big deal to say the words out loud, and it still is. I still get a little, like, thinking of that moment, that I want to sell this studio and that I want to move. And the moving piece, people say, "Why do you want to move?" I think we knew we wanted to retire here to North Carolina for years, and in this moment, I knew the dance studio was the only thing that was really holding us to Connecticut. Glenn had a remote job, which gives him great freedom. And I felt that I was just holding our life in this place that wasn't truly challenging us or inspiring us anymore. And it was time. So I declared it. So,
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. And I mean, I think our journeys kind of coincided where I was going through something similar with my studio. And it's so funny because I just talked to another business owner this morning who is looking to transition as well into a different business and chapter of her life. And she kind of said the same thing, like, I'm just tired of filling in for staff or covering this or covering that. And I remember feeling the same way. Like, I had a full team, but yet I was still subbing all the time. And I'm like, what is happening? So I think that it's those years of the responsibility and the weight that really creates this breaking point, which, like you said, was Friday night on your couch where you're just like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want this to be my problem anymore. I don't want this to be what is holding me back from pursuing this next chapter with my husband and, this future next thing that we have envisioned together. So I think that takes a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to basically walk away from something you've spent years pouring your heart and soul into. Like you said, it's not easy at all. And you still have emotions around it, as I somewhat feel as well. But ultimately, that when you're listening to that kind of gut intuition, you're going to make the right choice for yourself. And it doesn't mean it's not easy or it's not, emotional, but it definitely catapults you into a new life. So tell us about your new business, Little Leaps, and what inspired this new chapter for you. Like, take us through, okay, you sold your studio, you moved to North Carolina, and then what did you do before opening this business?
Well, Little Leaps actually started before I even moved. So it was the end of October when I made this decision. The sale of the business was moving forward in in November, and I was like, what am I going to do next? Because of course that's what I knew, that the people who were in my inner circle that knew what was happening, because it was not public yet, but my family and friends and you and other, all these people were saying, what are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? And so I really had to think about it. Even though I wasn't going to leave my business officially until the following June, I knew I had to think about what was next. What I have skills. I used to work in an office. I used to do payroll and HR. I have things, but at that time I was almost 50 years old. Now I am. And I was like, what does a 50-year-old do to reinvent her life? So when I really just started thinking hard about what brought me joy in my life at that moment, still at my studio in Connecticut, it was the teaching part of it. And I had really gotten away from I still taught, but I was so bogged down in the management piece that I wasn't able to focus as much as I wanted to on my classes. And the classes that I love the most are the little ones, the toddlers, the preschoolers, the kindergartners. That, that's just where I just love that, those age groups. They're really where I think I shine as a teacher, and they just bring out the best in me, and I hope I bring out the best in them. So I thought, well, can I have a dance studio again that doesn't weigh me down, that brings me joy, that I build around my strengths and my passions? And if you recall, I said I bought my prior studio, so there were a lot of things that were already in place, and I didn't have the maturity or the knowledge about myself at the time to understand that I could change that studio and that business at all. There's a lot of fear when you buy a business. What if you change it, right? Will they be upset with you? Will the customers come? So I really just stuck with the model that it was. So Little Leaps came out of this idea that I want to create a space for children to learn dance and other performing arts at a really high quality, a really high level of with an education focus, not a competitive studio, focus on development, on holistically, creating classes that are really truly addressing the needs of the whole child, and not just, how high can you kick your leg, are you the most flexible, and I'm not saying that other dance studios are doing that. I want to be really clear, there are amazing dance programs all over this country and all over the world, and I believe that all dance educators are really trying to do the best and for their kids and their students. I just want to really focus in on what is the best for this segment of children 8 and under, and how can I give them the best tools to go out and lead successful, happy, joyful lives, whether that's dancing or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you just decided to go back to the parts of your business that you love, right? Instead of even just transitioning into a totally new business, which sometimes that's what we want. We want something new, but sometimes it's also just getting rid of the heaviness or the way the business had been built up to be so large. Like you said, you had never intended it to be that big, and you never maybe really got to make it your own because you bought it from someone else. So I'm always saying this, and we don't hear it enough in business, I think, but like bigger is not better. It doesn't need to be bigger in order for you to be better, for your business to be the best. It can literally stay smaller and have just those elements that you love the most. And that's going to be more fulfilling to you than maybe having the biggest, best of everything and the big team and, thousands of dance students. Like, I think that it's really inspiring to hear you say that you actually wanted it to be smaller and you wanted it to be more what you wanted and intimate, and even just niching down to
Yeah.
those young kids. I think everyone can take this and translate it into their business. If you're in a place where you've built a business and maybe it turned out to be not the way you wanted to, you can move on to other things, or there's no one that says you have to continue to do business the way that you have. You can go back and redo it over like you did.
Absolutely. And I mean, I really, like you're saying, bigger, bigger isn't always better. I really want to hone in on the quality and the experiences that I create at Little Leaps now. And, even now in early days before we have our true own home, and I'm, teaching at different locations in my current city, my focus is really on the personalization of the experience, that I know every parent's name when they come in, not just their child's name, that we talk about, what's going on with them, how was their week, I'm really building these connections and trying to create a community that is personal and doesn't feel so big that you're lost in the shuffle as a customer, that everyone really feels important and like that they matter, and that they're making connections with others, because parents of young children can often feel really isolated in their lives, especially if they're stay-at-home parents that are just with the kids all the time. Making connections with others adults, that's just as important to me as in my building of this business as it is in the educating the children part of it. It's really about building that community.
Absolutely. And let's talk about community because so you had this business idea for Little Leaps, but before you even took it and, made it a thing in your new city, you did a ton of community networking. You were searching out all the different places that you could connect with other businesses, other people, the chamber. Tell us about that, like, kind of time in between really launching, which I know you're still kind of building up to, right? Having your own space. So, what did you do in the meantime to start a new business in a totally new location and basically start from zero? What did you do to kind of build those community connections?
Yeah, it was really wild. I mean, I was just thinking about it before our call. I mean, I set up the LLC and got everything going when I was still sitting in my office in Connecticut in March, like 6 months before I actually moved here to North Carolina. And so the first step for me was just getting some social media going and myself getting involved in social media to be watching and seeing what I could learn about the community from afar before I even got there. And then as soon as I got here, I was okay. I know that there's this networking group that I want to be sure I get to. That there are these events that I need to keep an eye on, and here are the organizations in town that cater to children and families. And where are the other dance studios, or where are the other programs that will be my competitors, or perhaps my collaborators, depending on how that works out. So the first step for me was just really getting into business networking groups, which was interesting because there aren't a lot of dance studio owners in business networking groups, I've learned, unless they are dance studio owner groups. So I often would step up to introduce myself in these rooms, and people would be like, "What do you do?" Oh, okay. But it was a great way to start getting recognized and to make connections in the community where I knew nobody except for my mother-in-law. So, I mean, I've made some really valuable business connections that have helped me along the way. And then on a more personalized to my business level, I mentioned that I was seeking out other places where kids and families are going or gathering, or services they're using in the community. I I looked for opportunities to volunteer. And what I found was that we have a wonderful center here in Wilmington, North Carolina, called the Fit for Fun Center, that's run by the city, and it's an indoor outdoor children and family play space for children under 5. So what better place for me to get involved with than a place for children and families under 5. So I started volunteering there almost maybe a month after I moved here, and met their team, their staff is wonderful. Met wonderful families who go there, and eventually I went from helping out with the cleaning up and the checking people in and the other volunteer duties to actually adding a pop-up class weekly there that I do for free, and that it's included with the center admission. But it's been a really wonderful way to get my business name and me out there. And the connections I made with the staff of that center have just multiplied in terms of the goodness they've created. I've been invited to go to other community events with them. They've actually shared professional development opportunities with me that I might not have known about that are happening in the area. So that was big. I really encourage people, whether you know your town or you're moving to a new place, get out there to a networking group, or Google, where do your customers gather? Like, find out, where are these people, and go to those places or volunteer there. Um, it's really about pushing yourself out there to meet people. I mean, that's the number one thing. It's the human connections.
1000%. And what I love to hear is you really did your market research before jumping into building a new business. And I cannot stress enough how many business owners could do more market research and kind of beta testing and community connecting before just building a business. I think, again, the saying of build it and they will come is so false because you need to build the relationships before you expect people to just show up and support your business. So I think what you've done is so incredibly key. And, when you're ready to open your actual space, you're going to have all these incredible people there supporting you because you have put in the time, the energy to build a relationship along the way. Now, as you said, it takes putting yourself out there, and that can be very intimidating for people to walk into a room where you don't know a single person. So, do you have any advice when you're going to these events and you don't know anyone? Do you have a strategy? Do you have a mindset that you're walking into it with that would be helpful for someone who's like, that sounds terrifying?
I think the number one thing for me is that I had to get over, you know, this idea that I couldn't just turn to the person next to me and say, "So what do you do?" Or like, where? Oh, I'm new here. Have you lived here long? Just actually having that one, like starting the conversation was the hardest thing for me. And so I was always very grateful when somebody else started the conversation for me, and that helped. I think, it's just really being courageous and not and kind of letting go of any of your insecurities just for like a second, because once you get past like that first like couple seconds of a conversation with a person, most likely they were just sitting next to you thinking, I don't know anybody here either, and they were just so happy that you turned to talk to them. And so like that, it's just that moment of fear before you open your mouth to say something, and then you're talking, and if it doesn't spark and you don't have a lot to talk about, you just, that was great to meet you, and you just move on to whatever else is going on. I just think it's really about you have to just put aside your what is your anxiety, right? We're all anxious about being rejected by other people, and you just have to say, you know what, I don't care if they don't, if they say, oh yeah, I don't want to talk to you and walk away, whatever, at least I tried, right?
Yes. And it's like that. What is
And
it?
I've
The
never had that happen. I'll just say nobody's ever said I
Right.
don't want to
No
talk to
one
you.
ever says that. Yes. And it's like that 5-second rule. Just count it down and ask the question. You just never know what could become of a conversation. And maybe it's not even that person that you really make a true connection with, but for some reason you made an impression on them or they made an impression on you, and they can connect you or you can connect them with someone else that would be beneficial. It's
Yeah.
like that chain of effect, but it will never happen or start if we don't make that initial, you know,
And a
conversation.
compliment is like a great way, especially I think it's easier when you're talking to another woman, as a woman, for me to, if I was sitting next to you, to go, I really love your earrings. Where did you get those? You've started a conversation right there, like without sort of asking the, what do you do? Which is the standard question that we always ask other people. If
Yes.
there is something that you genuinely like about the appearance or what they're wearing or their hair, I had a couple people start conversations with me and say, oh, I like your shirt. And I thought, oh, that's great. I'm going to start doing that. Or whatever it was. So I think the compliment is a great, easy way to get it started.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Easy to compliment and just finding something that you can connect over, even if it is your earrings or your shirt or, something small just to break into that conversation. I
Right.
love it. Super great tip. Well, tell us a little bit even more about what's coming with Little Leaps and what are you working towards, and maybe a little bit more info on that and what's coming up for you in business and life.
Yeah, well, I mean, I mentioned before, we don't have our home yet. We do have our home. It's just being built out. So Little Leap's actual final lily pad, if you will, is in the works. Nobody on this call can see that my logo is a frog, but you know that my logo is a frog, Stephanie. So that's why I say lily pad. So our pad is in the works, and we don't have their timeline yet, although I'm very hopeful that by next week I will have a much better idea of our timeline to be moving in there. So where we're at now is I'm in the process of getting a fall schedule together and starting to enroll some students for a mini session for the fall, like a September through December. And with the promise that hopefully sometime in that session, we're going to move from our temporary space that we rent to our wonderful brand new studio, which is literally brand new from the ground up, like everything. It is an empty concrete shell right now. So everything that goes into the studio, from the doorknobs to the floors to the paint, like, I mean, it, like everything is going to be fantastic. So I'm super excited about that, and having the ability to design a space that is what I want. Again, my other studio was what I got, and it was great, but this is so exciting for me. So that's a big deal. We're going to be able to expand our class offerings once we get into that space as well. And I started looking at performance venues too, because my little dancers need to perform as well. So I'm already thinking ahead to the spring and what that will bring in terms of performance opportunity, traditional recital, or what does that look like? So for me right now, my focus is totally on getting this launch off the ground, planning the grand opening, some exciting promotions. I just started a founding 50 families promotion that I'm working on to really get some folks in the door early as early adopters and like lock them in with some special perks. But to encourage people to jump on board with us even before we are in that new beautiful space. It's like my dream was that we would move into the new beautiful space in September. That isn't happening. So what do we do as entrepreneurs? We figure out another plan. So onward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us what is exciting you most about this new venture, and also maybe just some like fears that you have around it because it is something new.
What I mean, exciting. I think I already mentioned the idea that like I can make these new things, that I'm not stuck with trying to revamp something, whether that's physical space or programs. I'm building my curriculum, from myself. It's not something that already existed. There's no expectations of what these classes will be. I'm able to really just mold it from the start, and my prior entrepreneurial journey was not that. So this is very exciting for me to be able to start something from the very bottom and build it into what I hope I will always love. And that's the most exciting thing, and the challenge at the same time is to not fall into old traps and old mistakes that I made in the past, and to be sure that I am building this intentionally in a way that I will not be sitting on my couch on a Friday night crying 10 years from now, and that I will have built a business that I continue to love and that I'm able to step away from, and not feel that it's always pulling me back in when if I don't want to be there.
Yeah, it's so interesting how I think when you have built one business and you decide to build a second, whether you're still running the first one or not, you build it so differently and with so much more experience and wisdom. And like you said, the word intentionality, because, when we're doing it the first time, it's like anything, you're just doing the best you can, figuring it out along the way. But
And the
when you're,
time,
yes,
yes, hard
literally.
work.
And then every time from that, second, third, fourth, whatever, you are building from experience. So I just think you can build it in such a better way with more intentionality for what you actually want, that second, third, fourth time around, which is very exciting. And yeah, I can understand though, because like I think it's normal to have that kind of mentality of like going backwards, or, oh, I don't want to feel like that again, or being in the same position, like you said, in 10 years. I think we all have some of those natural fears in anything new that we do because it's a projection of our past. So,
Sure.
is there anything you've had to kind of maybe work through in kind of the mental, emotional side of letting go of your first, studio experience and even just that kind of chapter and moving into a new one?
I mean, the people. I mean, I loved the people that worked for me and worked with me. Of course, I do miss them, and that's something that that it just is. I moved. It's not even like I see them on a daily basis anymore. So I miss those people. I wish I could have brought a lot of them with me, but they're happy there, and they've got to keep that place going and that place thriving. I think in the early days there was a little bit of um, just worry about whether or not the new owner was, well equipped. And, she wasn't asking a lot of me. And I think there was a little bit of ego on my part that I was like, why doesn't she need me? And honestly, she's perfectly capable and she has a fantastic support system and she doesn't need me. And I think that was probably, that was, selfishly for me, I had a little bit of like, why isn't she texting me all these questions? Even though I really didn't actually want to be kept pulled back to the business at all. But my ego was saying, what? I'm not necessary. They can do this without me. So that was a little bit hard. But I've moved on from that. I'm so absorbed and invigorated in what's going on with building this business with Little Leaps that I see some great social media posts. I see the kids are growing, and I'm so happy that we have. This is one of the positives about social media, is that I can still see those kids who taught when they were 2 years old, growing and developing and becoming wonderful dancers and humans from afar. I can still watch their journeys, which I do appreciate. It would be really sad for me if I wasn't able to kind of watch from the wings, so to speak. A little bit because those kids are important to me and they always will be.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And I'm sure just like moving on from something, yeah, you want to feel wanted, right? But at the same time, you don't. So I'm sure there was, yeah, just kind of some bittersweetness with all of that. I Let's talk a little bit about personal and professional growth and development because that is originally how we met, is through a coaching company called More Than Just Great Dancing. We did our certified coach training together 3 years ago, which is wild. And for me, I know that was a huge catalyst into the businesses I'm running now, the things I want to pursue, just building up my confidence to be able to speak and lead and do all of these things. How has personal and professional development played a role in not only your business journey, but, just building up yourself as well? What does that mean to you?
Well, I 100% believe that I would not have made any of the moves that I made in the last 2 years had I not been for that certified coach training and that experience. And not just the training, but the people like you and the other friendships that I have made because of that time we spent together in that intense environment. Um, you know, I really borrowed courage from people to make the moves that I did. And if I didn't truly believe that I had this safety net if I fell, or people lifting me up when I needed to be lifted up, which I do, and I feel that about you and about my other dear friends who came out of that experience and that whole More Than Just Great Dancing network, I would never have had the courage to make the moves that I made. And when we go back to talking about walking into a room and starting conversations with people that I don't know, that personal professional growth that I got out of that was huge because I could have moved here and I probably still wouldn't know anybody a year later because I would not have had the confidence or the skills, communication wise, to make those network connections and to put myself into rooms where I was giving an elevator pitch or introducing myself. That I just wouldn't have done it. I just wouldn't have done it. So I guess, to answer the question, personal professional development is huge for me. And I think my life right now is evidence that the investments that I made in that are priceless. Like I couldn't put a price tag on that, and I will not stop investing in that development. I continued to remain a member of More Than Just Great Dancing throughout the past year, even though I didn't have a full functioning business, because I knew that I needed that community and that coaching and that development piece to help propel me and my business forward, and to help me out when I was like, I can't do this. Why am I doing this? There are those days where you think, why didn't I just go get a regular job? This is hard. So that's really important. And I feel really good that I can like be a living testament to like it's important to invest in yourself when I talk to other people and other business owners who go like, oh well, that conference was kind of expensive, or I don't want to go to that thing because it was like, and I just think you got to invest in yourself. And it's so important, and it will the compound effect is real in terms of joy and growth and financial and business success too. It all comes back.
100%. And I remember even having that conversation with you. I think I was just going through the same thing of like leaving my studio, and you were kind of deciding to sell your studio. And I think just having other people that are going through similar experiences is so essential, because it makes you feel like you're not the only one. You're less alone. You're supported. And people that invest in themselves are constantly evolving and growing. And that's what I think is so cool about even just this company that we're talking about. But I'm sure it's evident in other, communities as well, as the people that are evolving and growing are going to move on and possibly do other things outside of, maybe their initial reason for being there. And it's been really cool to see you and so many other members that have decided, whether you stayed in the dance industry or not, but you've decided to move on and try new things and transition into new businesses. And I just think to support the evolution of people is so essential in a community, because if we're learning and growing together, we're going to evolve. So it's really important to have those core people that support that evolution, right? Because we can all think of people that are not happy with us when we decide that we don't want to do this anymore. And, I think that's one of the biggest fears, is that we're going to disappoint people. And I'm sure we do disappoint people. I'm sure I disappointed a lot of people. And that weighed heavy on me, and it still does some days. But at the end of the day, my support system for my growth, my evolution, was so much greater, that it allowed me to step into that season, like you said, and borrow some of the confidence that I didn't quite have in myself, but other people had in me at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important to find those people, whether they are part of a coaching community, part of a business networking group, just your friends or a family, like to find those people who will support. I love you're talking about the evolution, support your evolution wherever it takes you.
Yeah.
Because people did think, why are you selling this successful business when you're almost 50 years old? Why would you walk away from this thing? And believe me, my own family was like, what are you doing? What? So it's just, I had a lot of people who wondered why would I make such a decision? But when I look back now, over a year later, it's about 2 years since the decision was made, I don't have any regrets, because I know that I'm happy now.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what's important, right?
And
That's
that's
what
all
matters.
that matters. Yeah. Yeah. It was about 2 years ago that I made my initial decision to like get into real estate, try something different. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people that are in a season of feeling like it's time for something different. I don't know if this is conversations you've had with people, but man, I feel like I hear it every day with someone just like ready for the next thing, the next chapter. I think we just have this perspective shift coming out of, COVID and all of those things, that like, hey, if we're not happy, we have to take the personal responsibility and make the decisions to change. And you are such an example of, like you said, you were about to be 50 years old and completely made this huge life change. So it doesn't matter what age or stage of life or business you're at, you always have the right to completely change your life, regardless of anyone else's opinion. And I think more and more people need to come to that realization, and it takes that confidence and courage, because we've built up our lives and we've built up our businesses to be this thing. But at the end of the day, like, why run a business when it's not fulfilling you and it's not serving you in the same ways? It doesn't matter how much money you make. At the end of the day, it's about purpose and fulfillment. So I think when your business is not giving you that, or it's not giving you that in your lifestyle, then it's on you to make a change.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What would you say has been one of your biggest obstacles or challenges, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is COVID, running a dance studio during a pandemic. Yeah, but more personally, my biggest obstacle for is myself most most of the time. I'm really not a great delegator, and that I really blame myself for my other business, my former studio, growing into something that I didn't love anymore, and mostly because I was not able to let go of things and equip people to do their jobs or to take things off of my plate. So I ended up with too many plates in the air, and that was that crushing weight. And that's on me. So the delegating piece of it, it's really been a challenge for me. I don't have staff right now, but I'm still actively trying to delegate, whether that's delegating to technology, some things, whether it's, or even just thinking ahead as I'm building systems. This is going to be the first thing I take off my plate when I hire somebody. I do have 2 ads out now to hire staff. So I am mentally putting myself in the place of what are those job responsibilities, and how are you going to get there with them? So I was getting much better at the delegating, so good at it when I left my studio that I actually just gave my whole studio to somebody. but but I think that was, in a way, even though I sold it and it's not true delegating, there was a I mean, we talked before about if I had any kind of bittersweet stuff about letting go of it. She didn't ask me any questions like why don't they need me? But that was a really great lesson for me as I move forward, that other people can run this huge thing that you thought only you could do. So now, moving forward, get on this sooner. Don't wait till the day that you're crying on the couch to delegate to somebody. Do it from the get-go. So I don't know how I got over the challenge. I think that getting over the challenge, probably selling my business was part of getting over that challenge for me. And I think it was the right thing. I don't want to tell people they should sell their business because they're bad delegators. But I think everybody has to find their own, if that's something you struggle with, you have to find your own way to start letting go. Addicted to cooking competition shows like Top Chef and all things Gordon Ramsay. And Gordon Ramsay said, I can't remember which show it was, but I texted this quote to my friends because I was like, this is me. I need to hear this. If you don't let go, it can't grow. There was something to that effect. And I was like, that's great. That's what I need to hear. Like, if you don't let go, your business can't grow.
Yes. Yeah. And I love that you stated, I don't have staff right now. I don't have a team, but that doesn't mean I can't delegate. You can delegate things out to automation, software. Maybe it's just collaboration, asking people to help you. Hey, will you promote this event that I have coming up? Cross promotion between businesses, and then noting in the back of your mind as you build this business, this is something I'm going to get off my plate as soon as possible. It's not going to be all me, and knowing when that time is. And sometimes we get forced into that, maybe through something catastrophic, or we have an injury, or, then we're forced to delegate. And I don't think we ever really, that's not ideal, right? To actually have to delegate when we have no systems in place. So building the systems as you go. So when the time comes and you need them, they're there, and the people are there, and they're trained, and they know how you would want things to be done. And I definitely did the same thing in my first business. I tried to delegate. I had systems, but at the end of the day, a lot of the business was built around me. And I'm only one person. And so even in this new era of my life and businesses, one of my biggest goals is I want a 2 to 3 month maternity leave where I am literally not working and not being bothered all the time either. So how do I do that? So it's been forcing me to delegate.
You can.
Yeah. Yes. And we deserve that as business owners. We deserve to have time away that's uninterrupted and, not filled with other people's urgencies and emergencies. So I think that's a huge obstacle that so many of us face, and we have to overcome it. But let's do it proactively, instead of reactively when it, becomes a problem. So one of my favorite questions to ask is, what are you most proud of about yourself?
I think I'm most That's such a hard question, Stephanie.
I know.
I think I'm most proud of myself that I had the courage to make the change because I could have easily just not done it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I took
I love it.
the hard road, and I'm proud of myself for doing that.
Yeah, and I'm so proud of you too.
Well, thank you.
Simple as that. My final question is, what drives your soul today? What do you get up for each morning?
Right now in this season of life, I get up for new experiences, for just being out like and exploring this new place that I live and meeting new people. Just sitting on my back deck, which I did. I loved my townhouse in Hartford, by the way, but we didn't have a yard. We were in a townhouse in a city, and now I have a yard and a deck, and sitting out there with a glass of wine, watching the sunset with Glenn and the dogs running around. I mean, it's this new I get up for these new experiences, these new things that are happening in my life every day. It's really exciting.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Some days I feel like I have to like pinch myself that like this is my life now. Like
Yeah.
I did this. I created this.
Yeah,
And it was
I
only
totally
through
relate to that.
yeah, and it was only through going through the hard parts of making those hard decisions and maybe disappointing other people and like, all of those fears on the other side of that is this life that I love. I'm like, I don't have to get up at 5 a.m. I don't have to set an alarm. I can sleep as late as I want. I can have a slow morning. I decide my schedule. I get, like just that freedom. That's what we're after. So to be able to say, I now have what I've been going after is really just like peace of mind.
So great. I'm so happy for you. So happy for us.
For us, yes,
Inspired me so much
absolutely.
in my journey, and I'm like feel like we were parallel in a lot of ways, and it's just been so great to have you as a sounding board and just as a cheerleader for me along the way. So I appreciate you so much. I'm so happy
Well,
with you.
I feel the same about you. It's been so fun to just be a part of each other's journeys. And, I think that I believe in like divine timing of things. And I think people come into our lives at certain times to be those voices of encouragement and support. And yeah, I think it's been so fun to be that for each other across the country, right? I'm in the Midwest, you're over on the East Coast, and we get to see each other a couple times a year, and it's so fun to just catch up and follow each other's journeys. So speaking of following you on your journey, where can we find you?
So on social media, on Facebook and Instagram, we're at Little Leaps Kids, and my website is littleleapskids.com.
And what is your personal Instagram? Because
Oh,
I like following that too, because I get to see all the
it's
places you're going.
Carrie in Wilmington.
Okay,
Yeah,
Carrie and
Carrie in Wilmington, my first name, and I see it's on the screen, so I have to spell it for you. Yeah, Carrie in Wilmington. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing time with us today and sharing your experiences with us, Carrie. It was awesome to have you.
Thank you. It was so much fun talking with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And until next time, keep following what drives your soul. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Soul Driven with Steph. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it out with someone else who needs to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you know when new episodes drop. And until next time, be sure to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul.